Hi everyone, Ouch the Knee Cramp Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Freddie Gibbs and Madlib car driving by album, Piñata. This is the long-awaited, full-length LP from DJ, producer, rapper Madlib, aka Otis Jackson Jr., aka Lord Quas, aka The Loop Digger, aka The Beat Conductor, and Indiana rapper Freddie Gibbs. My love for Madlib and hip-hop just run so deep. He's been the architect of some of my favorite songs and albums in this genre, like Mad Villainy and The Unseen. He's worked with numerous MCs whom I have a lot of respect for, like Mos Def, Vinnie Paz, Blue, Talib Kweli. There's so much I can say about this guy, and I feel that few artists out there right now define hip-hop quite in the same way that he does. He's prolific, he's unique, a great deal of his output is impressive, despite the deceptively simple approach he takes to sampling and beat assembly. His instrumentals are jazzy, they're smooth, they're colorful, they tend to be a little dusty, a little grimy, and occasionally he will put an instrumental out there that is incredibly experimental or off-kilter. However, I've never really been as crazy about Freddie Gibbs. I never thought he was a terrible MC, maybe a little redundant with his flows sometimes and his subject matter. He tends to kind of toe this gangsta rap line and simultaneously is also self-aware enough to kind of give an objective look at this lifestyle that he leads and not only love it and embrace it, but kind of critique it as well. However, on his most recent projects, I think here and there he's dipped into some trashy hooks. I've always heard a song or two that I liked, but never anything more than that really, which kind of kept me on the fence as Freddie Gibbs and Madlib announced the fact that they were going to be teaming up, coming out with a record, and they were putting out some pretty good songs and EPs like Deeper and Shame, as well as Thuggin', because even though these songs were really good, who knows if it's actually going to pan out into a great record. It's not like Madlib hasn't dropped lackluster collaborative projects before, O.J. Simpson, but I came out of this record incredibly surprised. Oh man, this thing is good. It showcases everything that I love about Madlib's instrumental style, and on top of it, Freddie Gibbs seems to be on his best behavior when it comes to the lyrics in these songs, the concepts that he has in these songs, just generally being focused on the subject matter at hand. And consistently, he delivers the more thought-provoking side of his typically gangsta persona. As far as the beats go on this thing, there are so many highlights. Like the very grimy funk groove on the song Scarface, the tinny synthesizers on this thing, the weird kind of police sirens or what sounds like gunshots going on in the background. This thing sounds like it was lifted straight out of a 70s exploitation film. And with Madlib, while the appeal continues to be the assembly, the composition of the beat, it's also how he treats the sounds within the beat too. This instrumental, as if this could even be the case, but this instrumental sounds like it was made in the 70s and it sort of has gotten more wrinkles and just sort of flabbier and more experienced over time in a good way. I mean, it's kind of like a finely aged wine or cheese. I love the warm bass and the stuttering hi-hats and the analog synthesizer lead pricks on the song High. The twinkling guitar leads on the song Thuggin' are fantastic. This instrumental to me is really top-notch when it comes to the more psychedelic side of Madlib's instrumentals. And that's another thing I don't think he gets enough credit for. While he is, very, very strictly a hip-hop producer, I think his beats have always had a very subtly psychedelic quality to them, sort of trippy, very textured. There's Shitsville, which is maybe my favorite beat on this entire LP with its really urgent, classical string arpeggios playing throughout the track. I love the groove, the beat of this song too. Really one of the more cinematic instrumentals on the entire LP. And there are some other instrumentals here as well that sort of shoot for that glossy, high-class soul sampling like Robes. This instrumental is so beautiful. It's like one beautiful sample of a song cascading over another. It's so layered, it's so beautiful, and I think the song Shame with BJ the Chicago Kid features a lot of the same characteristics too, but BJ's guest vocals on this track are so well mixed into the song and also kind of have a vintage quality to them that I never really took notice of until now. Just so silky smooth, so golden age soul, that as he's singing over the song, his contribution to the track actually sounds original to the sample. There's a really grave set of synthesizer arpeggios and some very punchy horn hits on the Posse track that ends the song out that features verses from Mac Miller, Michi Darko, Casey Veggies, Damo Genesis, G Wiz, and Suleiman. And the song Real, the beat that kicks this track off, is probably one of the most hard-hitting, insane trunk knockers on this entire LP. Not only does the beat hit hard, but I love how noisy the instrumental is, and yet Freddie Gibbs just has enough space to kind of do what he does. It just sounds like there's so many twinkly guitars or maybe even sitars just piling on top of each other with this track, and what I suspect are maybe xylophones or vibraphones kind of littered in the background too. And then the track just kind of stops and kicks into this surprise beat transition, which is an incredibly blissful piece of hip-hop magic, a real highlight on this LP. And then there's the song Bomb that has a number of different synth sounds, watery synthesizer leads, a kind of really bright, shrill wall of synthesizers that pop in occasionally, and yet the song is eerie and spacious enough to give Freddie Gibbs just the perfect stage for what he's trying to do lyrically. And that is the number one most important thing about these instrumentals. They complement what Freddie is doing, and that's important. His delivery tends to run a little monotone, and that is part of what has made me so unenthusiastic about his past projects, but Madlib does such a great job of setting the emotional tone of each song that it's like almost as if I can kind of predict the sort of track that Freddie Gibbs is going to come through with before he even starts spitting. The sound of these beats just fits the tone of these songs so well. Like, for example, the track Deeper, a song where Freddie Gibbs essentially used to be in love with this girl, the relationship is over, and it cut him deep. And every single time he says that on the hook of this track, I'm just like, damn. Essentially, this woman matured beyond him and his thug life and wanted to date a guy who was just, in Freddie Gibbs' account, more square. And he also makes note that, what does this guy got that I ain't got? He's just trying to be an astronaut. Although, astronauts are pretty cool. But with the twist ending toward the back end of this track, this is easily one of the most impressive tracks I've heard Freddie Gibbs pull together. And then there's the song Thuggin', where essentially Freddie Gibbs is like addicted to this street lifestyle. He doesn't see himself leaving it. He says he's gonna be sagging his pants when he's 40. And even if he does leave, the streets are still gonna be in him. And while he does seem to, again, embrace this lifestyle, he doesn't really paint a very pretty picture of growing old in this world. This is a sentiment he expresses again, but I think with even more vivid lyrics on the song Broken. And then for those who are looking down on Freddie Gibbs and the life that he leads, there is the track Shitsville, where essentially he's kind of putting haters in their place, not only with one of the most relentless flows on this entire LP, but with the mantra that you're just like me. With all the cheating, the drinking, the drugs, he just kind of sees himself as being someone who is making the best of the situation that he's in, like anyone else. And agree or disagree, the passion that he has for this message on this track is undeniable. And simultaneously, this track is a bit of a welcome to my world kind of anthem too, with a killer hook that shows off a pretty strong Tupac influence. Not a comparison I usually make, because so many rappers are quick to already compare themselves to Tupac. But this is one of the few moments where I think not only the sound of Freddie Gibbs' voice, the way that he delivers this hook, and the level of skill that he shows on this track as well. I mean, the comparison is legit. There are tracks where Freddie Gibbs is not quite as conscious and goes right for the aggressive jugular, like on the song Bomb, where he's kind of putting himself into this coke dealer persona, selling drugs, getting people addicted. Of course, Raekwon the Chef is on the back end of this track, delivers a very appropriate verse. And the last line on Gibbs' first verse of this track is hilariously violent, talking about how he's going to be leaving these people's thoughts on his shoelaces. And then there's the song Real, where immediately right after the intro, Gibbs goes in on young Jeezy really hard for mismanaging him when he was on his CTE World label. He's pretty unforgiving about the whole thing, and he takes some hard shots. And then there are some other tracks on here that feel really relaxed, laid back, kind of blissful, like Harold's, where it seems like Freddie Gibbs kind of reminisces about the past, his favorite fast food fried chicken orders. And then there is the song Shame with BJ the Chicago Kid. Again, while this track is a bit of a heartbreaker relationship-wise, it is a very relaxed, laid-back beauty. On the first half of this LP, Gibbs really holds his own track for track for track. The only real bump in the road is the Danny Brown feature on the song High, which doesn't really ruin the track for its lyricism, but the song is just so laid back and smooth, and then Danny Brown comes through with ba, 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 ba. No disrespect to the delivery or the flow. Obviously, I have already dug it on numerous tracks, but for this particular song, I think Danny Brown's more toned down delivery would have done just perfectly. But as far as the second half of this LP, there are a load of features that seem to pile in all at once and bring this record to a pretty strong close. There's Damo Genesis and Earl on Robes. Again and again, Damo seems to be just improving with every new feature that I hear him on. I respect the hustle. Then there is Earl's verse on here, which, I mean, you can't really expect a bad guest verse from Earl. Scarface sounds great on Broken. Then Freddie Gibbs and Ab-Soul actually come together on the track Lakers and sort of do a tribute to the West Coast. I can't always expect a great guest verse from Ab, but he does it on here. And the basketball references continue on the track KNICKS immediately after, which in a way, with Lakers here and KNICKS being right there afterwards, is sort of a nod to New York, but this song, topic-wise, is a lot less geographical and more about Freddie Gibbs' history, his past, kind of repeating the violence that he's been living with for so long. Again, Freddie Gibbs comes through with a really focused idea, concept, message on nearly every track here. Madlib comes through with some really great instrumentals every track here. There are a few moments that are maybe a little inconspicuous, like the intro could have been more hard-hitting. I think the song Uno does not stick out quite as much as other tracks on here. However, this is still a hell of a hip-hop album, and no question that it's going to go down as one of my favorites of this year. I will actually go as far as to say that this record is kind of like the second coming of Madvillain, and I can only hope that with time this record becomes just as infamous and that we all kind of sit here with blue balls waiting for these guys to follow this record up. This is the best thing I've heard Freddie Gibbs on, period, and I can only hope into the future with new mixtapes and new albums that he is able to keep up this kind of focus, this kind of passion, and this kind of captivating storytelling. I'm feeling a light to decent 9 on this thing. Transition. If you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Freddie Gibbs, Madlib, Piñata, forever.